Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take sources you send our way and, well, we dig into them. We pull out the key insights so you can get up to speed efficiently.
Become seriously well-informed. That's the aim.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at the Philippe Pinel Award. It's a significant one.
Sparked by Professor Ian Freckelton's acceptance speech for that very award.
Right. So our mission, if you will, is to understand why this award matters so much.
Yeah.
Who was Philippe Pinel, and what does this recognition tell us about mental health, the law, and, well, the kind of work Professor Freckelton does?
And his speech certainly hints at a very broad career: writing, judging, teaching, advocacy, all at that intersection of law and mental health. He's worn many hats: barrister, tribunal member, judge.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where do we start?
Well, the first thing Professor Freckelton highlights is just how meaningful it is to be recognized by your peers, your international colleagues.
Yes. He says, there is no more gratifying an acclamation than that which comes from one's international peers and colleagues.
Exactly. And in a field like this, mental health law, which is so complex, so sensitive, getting that nod from people who really get it, that speaks volumes.
It absolutely does. It tells you this isn't just any award, it's validation from the inside, from experts.
Precisely. And then he lists some, well, truly giants of the field, people who received it before or inspired him.
He starts with David Wexler and the late Bruce Winnick. They're often called the fathers of therapeutic jurisprudence.
Right. And therapeutic jurisprudence, for anyone maybe less familiar, it's essentially asking, how can the law itself be a force for good, for well-being?
So not just about rules and punishment, but about the impact of the legal process.
Yes, exactly. How can it empower people and involve them, be more collaborative, especially, when people are facing mental health challenges within that system?
That makes sense. It's a shift in thinking.
A huge shift. Wexler and Winnick really pioneered that framework.
Yeah.
So for Professor Freckelton to be honored alongside them, it says a lot about his own approach, his philosophy.
Then he lists some very prominent psychiatrists: John Gunn, Robert Sadoff, John Monahan, Paul Applebaum, Thomas Guthiel. Big names.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Heavyweights in forensic psychiatry, ethics, mental health law. Each one has carved out a really significant area of expertise.
It's quite the list.
It is. You've got expertise there on everything from mental disorders in prisons, like Dr. Gunn's work, to, say, Dr. Applebaum's focus on ethical questions in psychiatric practice. It shows the breadth of the field Freckelton is acknowledging.
And it's not just psychiatrists or academics. He also mentions some really distinguished judges.
Yes, that's crucial too. Baroness Brenda Hale from the UK Supreme Court,
Justice Claire Lower-Dube from Canada.
and Justice Michael Kirby from Australia's High Court. And Freckelton notes a direct link there, having co-edited a Festschrift, a collection of writings for Justice Kirby.
So a personal connection, too. And Kirby himself received a similar award, the Prix Yves Pluchet.
Correct. Which suggests, a kind of community, a tradition of recognizing this kind of important work internationally. These judges often grapple directly with applying mental health law.
They're on the front lines of interpretation.
Exactly. Their inclusion highlights how vital the judiciary is in protecting rights and ensuring proper treatment.
And finally, in that group, Professor Anthony Amsterdam, known for his appellate work, particularly fighting the death penalty in the U.S.
Which really brings in the human rights angle, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Professor Amsterdam's work is all about protecting the vulnerable. And that absolutely includes people with mental illness who can be at such a disadvantage in the legal system. It broadens the picture nicely.
Okay, so that's the context of past honorees and influences,
Yeah.
but he also talks about specific mentors. Professor David Weisstubb comes up first.
Ah, yes. The honorary life president of the Academy. And it sounds like he's been this, guiding force for decades, 40 years.
Championing cross-disciplinary work, mental health law, human rights.
But it's more than just leadership, isn't it? Freckelton describes this unique atmosphere Weisstubb created. Collaborative, optimistic, even bringing in poetry and music.
He mentions the Palau de la Música Catalana and Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. It paints a picture of a very culturally rich environment.
It really does. And Professor Weisstubb's recent Légion d'honneur award in France, plus the 40th anniversary of the Academy's first formal Congress. It underlines his huge contribution.
And there's that interesting detail about the informal start back in '77, with figures like Foucault involved.
Yes, Foucault, Goldstein, Zegers gives you a sense of the intellectual roots of the academy. And he also mentions Professor Weistov's recent milestone birthday. A lot happening.
He also speaks very warmly of Emerita Professor Danuta Mendelsohn.
Yes, a long friendship there.
Eh.
A mentor, board member.
Yeah.
He clearly respects her hugely. Her scholarly standing, but also her curiosity.
He jokes about his reading list always growing because of her.
Right. It shows those personal connections are vital. And her being unable to attend the Barcelona meeting due to illness, it highlights that personal side of this international group.
It reminds you these aren't just names on a page. There are real relationships and mentorships driving the work forward.
Absolutely. Which brings us to that rather charming anecdote he tells.
Ah, the special one.
Haha, yes. Meeting someone very closely connected with Academy royalty, as he puts it.
And her reaction is, ah, yes, the special one.
And he takes it with good humor, sees the positive in it.
It does suggest a certain, maybe close-knit feel to the Academy, doesn't it? A kind of shared understanding.
Perhaps. A familiarity beyond just professional links.
Okay, so let's pivot to the namesake of the award itself. Philippe Pinel. Why is he so significant?
Well, Pinel was a true pioneer, 1745 to 1826. His big contribution was advocating for humane treatment of the mentally ill, which sounds obvious now, but back then.
It was revolutionary. He famously unchained patients at the Bicêtre Hospital in Paris. There's a well-known painting of that.
Charles Bueller's painting, yes. And later he did similar work at Salpêtrière with female patients. Another painting by Tony Robert Fleury captures that. It was about recognizing their humanity.
More than just removing chains, it was a whole shift in attitude.
A fundamental shift. But he wasn't just about compassion, he was also trying to bring science into it. He developed a nosology, a classification system for mental illness, especially psychoses.
Laying groundwork for later work, like Cleckley's Mask of Sanity.
Exactly. And he moved away from the standard, often brutal, treatments of the time, bleeding, purging, blistering, awful stuff.
Towards what?
Toward actually talking to patients, recognizing that psychology played a part, interacting with them.
There's that quote Freckelton uses from Pinel's Treatise on Insanity from 1801.
Oh, it's powerful. Pinel observed that giving patients a degree of liberty, dictated not by weak but enlightened humanity, contributes in most instances to diminish the violence of the symptoms, and in some, to remove the complaint altogether.
Wow. So freedom and humane treatment could actually be therapeutic.
That was his radical insight. Treat people with dignity, give them some liberty, and it can actively help their condition. It flies in the face of just locking people away.
And Professor Freckelton sees a clear link between Pinel's ideas and his own work, right?
A very direct line. He talks about his 25 years on the Mental Health Tribunal in Victoria, his work redrafting laws, always pushing for the least coercive, most humane approach possible.
Which sounds exactly like Pinel's principle.
It does. And he connects Pinel's evidence-based approach to modern efforts. Things like stopping the misuse of psychiatry, he mentions Russia and China.
And reducing restrictive practices, seclusion, restraints.
Yes. Physical, mechanical, chemical restraints. And also understanding the harm that coercive treatment can do, even when mandated. It could be countertherapeutic.
So Pinel's enlightened humanity, Freckelton links that straight to therapeutic jurisprudence.
He does. That focus on empowerment, collaboration, dignity, it all connects back.
Pinel sounds incredibly ahead of his time, thinking about dignity of risk, human rights abuses.
Remarkably so. That 1794 speech calling for decent asylums, that's early advocacy for a rights-based approach.
And he wasn't just thinking about treatment in isolation. Freckelton mentions Pinel's ideas on normalizing detention when needed, reintegration, encouraging work.
Yes, thinking about the whole person, their place in society,
Yeah.
and even recognizing the limits of medicine back then. That 1806 quote,
About knowing when not to give medicine.
the art of knowing when to omit medicines altogether. He understood the importance of non-pharmacological approaches even then, very prescient.
Professor Freckelton also emphasizes the importance of linking scholarship and practice.
Absolutely. He draws that parallel between his academic work and his hands-on experience as a barrister, on the tribunal, as a judge. They feed each other.
He uses the Perinim Hall in Barcelona as an analogy, designed for arts and sciences to converge.
It's a lovely analogy.
Oh.
Because mental health law needs that convergence. You need the legal knowledge, the psychiatric understanding, the human insight. His career embodies that.
working on things like mental health defenses, human rights, involuntary commitment, compensation for psychiatric injury.
All areas where that blend of practical and scholarly knowledge is just essential.
So when you put it all together, receiving this specific award, the Prix Philippe Pinel, in that historic hall, surrounded by people like Professor Weistub, it's clearly a massive moment.
A huge career highlight, no doubt.
Yeah.
It recognizes decades of work that really resonates with Pinel's own legacy.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. This deep dive, prompted by Professor Freckelton's speech, shows the Prix Philippe Pinel isn't just another award. It really signifies major contributions to treating mental illness humanely and navigating that tricky space where law and psychiatry meet.
Definitely. Pinel started it, pushing for compassion and science. And people like Professor Freckelton and the others mentioned carry that torch forward.
And those core principles Pinel championed, they feel incredibly relevant today, don't they?
Absolutely. We're still debating these things. How do you balance ensuring safety with upholding someone's dignity, their autonomy, when they're experiencing mental illness?
That's the tension. Pinel brought it into focus centuries ago, and it's still right at the heart of discussions about mental health care and human rights now.
It really is.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Think about that balance, safety versus autonomy and dignity for people with mental illness. How can our laws, our attitudes, our systems best support care that is both effective and fundamentally humane? It's something Pinel started and something we're all still working on, worth reflecting on.